Good morning and welcome to LLT 121 Classical Mythology. Where were we when we last left off? Does anybody recall? The myth of Okay. According to Socrates, let's start out with a little bit of a review. What three things did I tell you to keep in mind as we study these katabasis legends? Here, I'll write katabasis on the board for you again. Is this arts rave chalk here? Okay. What did I tell you to look for in these katabasis myths? What did I tell you to consider? You don't know, do you? Pardon? There were three questions.
How optimistic or pessimistic?
Okay, how optimistic or how pessimistic is the picture of an afterlife? Number two is, do people bear any responsibilities for their actions? And your name is? Jeremy. What's the third one? You don't know. Moosehead. Relationship of the body to the soul. Very good. And where do these three stack up, Mona, in Homer's version of the Olympian afterlife? How optimistic or pessimistic is the picture of an afterlife? Okay, help us out here, Carrie. Very pessimistic. They got a bad Weltanschauung going here. Do people bear any responsibility for how they've lived in the afterlife according to Homer, circa 750 BC? Scott. You are Scott? What are you? Mike, snakehead. Snakehead. Do people in Homer's version bear any responsibility for... Unless they're really, really bad or really, really good ex-smoker. Is there any compulsion to lead a good and moral life, Mitch? Not, good answer. Not really. Just don't, serve your kid to the gods or try to rape a goddess or cheat death or something like that. And what is the relationship of the body to the soul, Phil, in Homer's account circa 750 BC?
They're separate and the soul is punished for what the body did.
Incorrect. Incorrect. Josh. Fred.
They are the same. They're not the same, but they are connected.
They are connected. Good. And then what happens to you when you die, Greer? Whoa, well put. Tersely put. The soul is left to a dull, useless, eternal afterlife. The body has perished. Your ability to do all the really good things in life, like drink beer, dance, eat, have sex, do the Macarena, are all gone. You're nothing but soul. The soul is just pointless. It's rattling around the afterlife like a BB in a beer can. Plato's Republic tries to address this. Plato's handbook, as I mentioned last time, was like a handbook of how to establish and maintain the perfect government. It goes on for 9 books, and then in book 10, Socrates asks some poor schmuck, well, how are we going to compel people to lead a moral life and be good? And Socrates answers his own fine question with the myth of was a soldier. His name is very easily spelled, E-R. He died in battle. He was put on a funeral pyre. They were going to light the funeral pyre, and he jumped off and said, boy, do I have a story to tell you. According to this fellow the soul at death reports to an opening, reports to the divine plane. Okay, by the way, I should warn you, this is an allegory, a parable. a symbolic explanation of a truth that can't otherwise be comprehended. And the new good souls are sent to heaven. It's the year 996 A.D. The new good souls are sent to heaven and rewarded for 100 years. The new bad souls are sent to hell, or actually they're sent to earth and punished 1,000 times over for 10 times over for 1,000 years. In the year 1996, these souls return to the cosmic plane, the divine plane, and are judged. Not judged. They remain on the plane for 7 days. They are shown the way that the universe works. According to Plato, it's kind of cute, very metaphysical. It's kind of like an upside-down umbrella on which the 7 planets that they then knew about spin around the Earth. I'm not going to spend much time with that. What I do want to tell you is that after the 5th day, the Lachesis, the fate in charge of measuring out your fate, welcomes you to the place where new bodies, new lives are selected. I pause for a question here. Ray.
I am a little bit confused about who's representing this book 10. Is it in the myth of Is it Plato or Socrates?
Socrates. You know, Ray, you bring up, as usual, a good point.
Thank you.
As always, Ray. The point is that I have a PhD in this stuff, okay? I give myself credit for being fairly intelligent, fairly interested in this stuff, even after all these years. And I still find Plato very hard to follow. And even on those occasions when I can comprehend Plato, it doesn't make me want to jump up and yell, "Amen, I have just found the truth that's going to tell me how to live my life." You know what I mean? Of course you do. How many of you have ever purchased a used car? No, I never have, oddly enough. But, you know, you look at the new used car and it's shiny and new, right? You walk around it, you kick the tires, okay, right? And then you sign a check or get a payment book and it's your new car. What's the only thing you know for sure about that car of yours that you have just bought? That from that point on, from the day you drive it off the lot, it's your problem. The friendly salesman, driven once a week by some little old lady on Sundays. These are all freeway miles, okay? Once you've bought the car, you have what? Oh, that's really terrible. And that's if the salesman answers your phone calls and stuff like that. The bottom line is, and I'm sure we've all been with it, whether it's a new car or a used car we bought, we look at the car, we do our homework, we bring to bear everything we know about that car, and then we drive it off the lot. And the moment you drive it off the lot, you've got to deal with it. It's your responsibility. Is this true or false? Have you ever been really angry at the car that you have been sold because it's not running right? And what does the salesman, what do the servicemen invariably tell you? Tough. They tell you, tough, deal with it. It's the same way here in Plato's myth of as recounted by Socrates, who does all the talking in Plato's books. The souls that have come to select new lives all are arranged, are given, they draw lots to see who picks first down to last. They are given lives to look at, a selection of lives. Let's say we put Okay, Mother Teresa's life out here. Okay. Okay, that's a pretty good Mother Teresa. Okay, we put a dog out here. And we put Beavis out here. Okay, Giggles, you get last pick. Okay. You, Crystal, you get to pick also. And let's see. Oh, I will have Elizabeth pick also. And you can go first since you're a repeater, Elizabeth. Here's the deal. You pick one of these lives based on what you have learned through your 1,000 years of punishment or reward. You can't know for sure how these lives are going to turn out, but your soul will pass over into the life of this person and live that life. You don't know how it's going to turn out, but the only thing you do know for sure is once you've picked it, there will be no whining. Okay? If, by the way, you are a female and you pick a male, I will not think you less womanly. If you are male and you pick a female, I will not think you less manly. And if any of you pick the dog, I will not consider you any less of a biped. Okay? But the point is, you need to pick a life and tell me what's going through your head when you pick it. Did I buy you some time, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Who are you going to pick, Elizabeth?
Well, I'd have to take the dog.
You'd have to take the dog. Why the dog, Elizabeth? That's brilliant.
Because Mother Teresa, her morals are too strong.
Okay, Mother Teresa is probably a sure bet to get into heaven, but you have to spend 80 years hanging around with lepers. Okay, very good. So Elizabeth has picked the dog. That means the dog is done. Crystal, you have a choice between Mother Teresa or Beavis.
What if you don't want either one?
Crystal, life doesn't work that way. You've got to get to work, you've got to get to school, you got to buy a car. And there's no whining in Plato's myth of Ur.
There's a big whining there because I would never want to be either one of them.
You've got no choice, Crystal. This will teach you to cut
See,
class.
Everything else is like eternity, I guess. Then I'll take Mother Teresa.
Not a bad bet. It's not going to be fun, but you've got a reasonably good chance, right, of spending the next 1,000 years getting rewarded 10 times over. Mark, what is your approach to your soul's next life trapped in the body of Beavis?
Beavis is cool.
Okay, I agree, as a matter of fact. But, I mean, what's your game plan here? No, we cut that part out. we,
Well, I don't have much choice in that. Might as well make it a cut.
well, that's really decent of you. You're going to just do the best you can of being Beavis. Well, I know how all these turn out. I know, for example, that the dog, Biff the dog, lived to be 14 years old, never had to worry about where her next meal was coming from. You know, her main job was barking at the paper boy and not defecating on the carpet and stuff like that. You got neutered fairly young, but other than that, you know, you had a pretty good life. And you didn't do anybody any harm. You did okay. That was the choice pick, by the way. Mother Teresa, where's Mother Teresa? Here's what you did. After about 75 years of selfless service to the poor and downtrodden and stuff like that, you figured, hey, what the heck? And you absconded with the treasury of your fine leprosarium and were last seen flying on a jumbo jet off to the Caribbean with Raul and Ramon, your two personal trainers. Hey, yeah! That's the good news, Mother Teresa. But the bad news is you just canceled out everything good you ever did. So you're going to be punished. So have a good time in the Caribbean. As for Beavis, after a tormented adolescence, Beavis attends Southwest Missouri State University, where he becomes an advisee of the deluxe yours truly, and under my tutelage becomes a scholar, an athlete, a leader of men, and a really good quality human being. In short order, he is elected governor of Missouri and president of the United States, during which time he invents a cure for male pattern baldness and brings peace to what was once the war-torn Soviet Union. By the time Beavis dies at age 72, he is revered as a statesman, and the capital of this fair country is renamed Beaviston. Well, that's pushing it, okay? But he was a great guy, President Beavis. And it turned out all right. And you even got to marry Winona Ryder.
Wait a second. So how come if he started out that, then he could cancel his out by?
That's very well put. I'm the teacher. This is a parable, Crystal. What I'm doing here is a parable. What Plato's doing is a parable. You're standing for the souls. The lives that I drew up on the board are standing for the lives that the dead Greek people got to pick out for. And as Mark points out, I'm standing for the supreme deity, whatever that is. Okay? You can't understand why I did what I did, right? How many of us can understand why God does what God does? Go figure it out. Interestingly enough, Odysseus, that really smart, tricky guy who starred in the Odyssey, picked an average schmuck, supposedly, according to Plato in his myth of He said Odysseus saw lives of kings and saw lives of animals and stuff like that. He picked an average schmuck who went to work every day, never did much good, never did much bad, in much the same way that Elizabeth picked Sparky the dog. Some poor schmuck picked a famous king who was renowned for his life of luxury and found out that this king did have a really luxurious and wonderful wife and then decided to kill his entire family. Whoa, he was so bad off that he was not allowed to live any more lives. Why? What is the compulsion to lead a moral life? Well, you just heard it, folks. You will be punished. And what is the purpose of life, then? Plato isn't too clear on this part. Because, to get back to your complaint, or your one, Crystal, Plato or Socrates, who is speaking through these books, never said for sure what God is. Never said for sure what happens to you after you die. However, this myth suggests that souls live on earth, are punished or rewarded, then brought back into a body again with the idea of improving enough times to be reunited with God or the supreme deity or the supreme good or Zeus, all of which are names that Plato used to refer to God. He didn't know. He didn't really pretend to know what was running the universe. He had a lot of different names for it, but he had to see some purpose in human life, and it was the ascent of the soul to reunion with whatever had created this whole universe in the first place that Plato saw as the purpose of life. So we give him a golf clap for that, and we will give him some applause too for figuring out a way to, quote-unquote, compel moral behavior. Behave or get whacked. However, The third criterion of my list, what is the relationship of the body? Oh, that's easy. The soul is much greater than the body. The body is just a place where the soul stays for a set period of years. The problem that I personally have is with Plato's account of what happens to you after you die is what, Ray dragged out of me a few minutes ago. It's pretty hard to understand. It's very complicated. And keep in mind, too, that this was written right around 375 BC, in a time period where literacy was not widespread, in a time period where, people didn't have an easy go of life. If it's difficult now to find people who will read, among college students, who will read Plato and meditate upon what it means and then put it to life. If it's hard to find such people now, imagine how difficult it must have been right around 375 BC. This wonderful myth of Plato's, this wonderful book of Plato's, the Republic, isn't going to reach a lot of people to start out with. And it's certainly not going to address to any extent the coldness, the darkness, the gloom inherent in the Olympian concept of the afterlife. Irk. I pause for a question here. Heather, do you have a question for me yet? Your name is still Josh? Josh? You got a question for me, Stan? Any questions? Elmo. I'm just going to make up names for you for the rest of the semester.
Have there ever any new souls created or just recycled?
That's an interesting point. It seems that they are recycled. Particularly bad souls are not allowed to live again. For example, in this schema, Hitler will not get it. In the year 2045 or 2945, we will not be seeing Adolf Hitler again. Okay, good question. Very well answered.
Never mind.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that population keeps getting bigger. But that if you took that into consideration.
Well, some of these people are reborn as animals and lower life forms and such like that. Yeah, but Hitler wouldn't even get to be a paramecium. Well, Hitler was pretty bad. Stalin, not much better. The third account we get, the third katabasis story, comes to us from a poem written by Virgil called the Aeneid, which was written by Virgil. I think I just knocked my clip off. Don't worry, I'm not pulling any funny stuff here. Right around the year 25 BC. Who was the hero of Virgil's Aeneid? Okay, way to go, guys. I once had a colleague who swears a student once raised her hand and said, Bob. Okay. Okay, the Aeneid by Virgil, written around 25 BC, is of interest to me primarily because it tries to mash together the quote-unquote traditional Olympian afterlife, complete with Cerberus the dog and Charon the ferryman and Tartarus and the Elysian fields and Styx, River of Hatred and Bad Music from the 1970s and early 80s and that stuff. The familiar afterlife we see in Homer's Odyssey, because Virgil, to a certain extent, is kind of like adapting Homer. But it also tries to mix in the moral thrust, if you will, of Plato's myth of and the works of the other philosophers. Aeneas gets carted around the underworld, primarily with a spy, the Sibyl, we'll meet her later, and by his father, Anchises. Now, I'm not going to require you to know that right now either, but remember, who is it that explains to Odysseus how the afterlife really works in the Odyssey? His mom. So, of course, Aeneas meets his dad down in the underworld. And Aeneas is he's on a mission to found Rome in Virgil's Aeneid. And so, down in the afterlife, he gets to see all these famous Romans who are going to be born as soon as he gets busy, so to speak, and founds Rome. But finally, the last thing his dad Anchises has to tell him is, what happens to you after you die? And I'm going to read this, and you're going to listen. The seeds of this mind and spirit have a fiery power and celestial origin, insofar as the limbs and joints of the body, which is of earth, harmful and subject to death, do not make them dull and slow them down. Thank you. Thus the souls, shut up in the prison of their bodies, experience fear, desire, joy, and sorrow, and do not see clearly their celestial nature. Moreover, when the last glimmer of life has gone, all the evils and diseases of the body do not yet completely depart from these poor souls, and it is inevitable that many ills, for a long time encrusted, become deeply ingrained in an amazing way. Therefore they are plied with punishments, and they pay the penalties for their former wickedness. Some spirits are hung suspended to the winds. For others, the infection of crime is washed by a vast whirlpool or burned out by fire. Each of us suffers his own shade. Carrie, what did you think of what I just read? Yeah, it's the same old Plato party line, right? What else do you think about it? How do you like the way it was presented? Did you like the way I read it? Oh, it was, huh? I did what I could for it, but it's boring. It's boring as heck. It doesn't make me want to jump up and yell amen. That is, if I understand it. I mean, just listen to this. They are plied with punishments and they pay the penalties. I'd like to penalize Virgil 15 yards for bad alliteration on that one. We note once more the complicated philosophical schema with its emphasis on morality, as Carrie points out. You are Carrie, aren't you? Well, it's nice to know I can get one right today. And again, it works fine. But what does it say to your average schmuck or schmuckette out on the streets? Let's begin our discussion of the mystery religions on that point. Point number one, the Olympian conception of the afterlife. Cold, depressing, boring, pointless. The philosophers came up with answers for it. Lead a moral life, and you will be rewarded. Did I ever tell you about the used car lot of souls? Or, no, you don't. You drive it, son. You bought it. That's Plato's tack on it. Or, Virgil will have you go to the underworld and hear a nifty speech. It's really nice, but it's not inspiring. It doesn't make you want to jump up and yell amen. So far, the Greek and Roman conception of the afterlife consists of scads of depressing details, no hope for a happy afterlife, and no purpose to human existence. In 750 BC, we've got scads of depressing details, no hopes for any satisfactory sort of afterlife, no purpose to human existence. Oh, I know the philosophers, try to come up with something, okay? Let's forget about the river Styx. Let's forget about the souls running up to the trench to drink blood. You're judged and punished or rewarded and allowed to live again. according to the philosophers. Woo-hoo. The great majority of people, then as now, are more interested in maybe a certain amount of emotional and intellectual satisfaction from their beliefs. They don't want something that just engages the mind. They would like to feel their religion. They want less explanation and more revelation. It happens that way. They want to be able to feel closeness with divinity through worship as opposed to the studying of boring philosophy texts, hence the mystery religions. I'm going to give you 2 reasons for the popularity of mystery religions. Number 1, thank you, Farrellyn. They provide 1, a hope for eternal life with some reconciliation with divinity. The more I teach the class, the more vague that definition gets. Idea being that you do not perish entirely once your life here is over, and there is some afterlife, a cut above what we read about in Homer's Odyssey. Be happy to. It will probably come out different, but hope for some afterlife with some reconciliation with the deities. You know, Zeus, God, you know, what have you. Number 2, the second thing that mystery religions provide is emotional satisfaction. The truth of eternal life, eternal happiness, and eternal joy has been revealed to you. You don't want to just sit there and say, great, woo-hoo. It must be celebrated. And for that reason, they have mystery religions. Here we go with the 3 major mystery religions. I could draw them up on the board for you, and I will. I know, I dropped the thing again. Number 1, the Eleusinian mysteries. These are the ones we'll be taking up first, Eleusinian mystery religions. This is the mystery religion of the goddess Demeter. It is called Eleusinian mysteries. They're called Eleusinian mysteries because they are located in the city of Eleusis, a suburb of Athens. You go. Number 2 is the Bacchic mysteries, which are the mysteries of Dionysus, god of wine, partying, and stuff. And number 3, which we probably will give rather short shrift to because they bore me, the Orphic mysteries, the mysteries of Orpheus, who was a famous musician who discovered that music could charm the savage beast. Here comes my incredibly iffy definition of a mystery religion. A mystery religion is a organized or semi-organized form of worship. Organized or semi-organized form of worship. Some of them are very organized. Some of them are woo-hoo, let's party. An organized or semi-organized form of worship promising immortality, in return for following a ritual or a lifestyle. And I'll repeat that. My definition, the one I have this year, of a mystery religion is an organized or semi-organized form of worship promising immortality in return for following a prescribed ritual or lifestyle. Scott? You're Scott. You got a question, Scott? Want to say anything? Any questions on this? Farrellyn?
Do these mystery religions come about through introduction of new religions?
Sometimes. Sometimes. For example, we will find out that the Bacchic mysteries of Dionysus were in all likelihood imported to ancient Greece, to the warm, fuzzy welcome one would expect would be accorded a god of partying and wine who dresses in a leopard skin suit and leads conga lines of howling women through the streets of your town. Okay, that was a good answer. Whereas the Eleusinian mysteries are based on a myth of Demeter, who is one of the very oldest of Greek goddesses, whose name basically means Mother Earth. Both kinds, Farrellyn. Good question, well answered. Other questions? Good yawn, Heather. You are Heather. Okay. The problem in studying mystery religions is they are mysteries. Okay? The word mystery comes from the ancient Greek verb meaning to keep your nostrils closed. Here's a question. Is there anybody here who belongs to a quote-unquote Greek organization, a fraternity or a sorority? Okay. Were you initiated, or did they say, hey, your name is Kristen? Did they say, hey, Kristen, you're a sister? Or did they have an initiation? You want to tell us all about it? Why not? Why don't you want to tell us? Why aren't you supposed to? I'm just busting your chops, but you know that. The idea is, you know, it doesn't just do it for your sorority to say, okay, the following people are sisters. Kristen, Mona, and Carrie and Farrellyn are all sisters. You got to have some pageantry, right? You got to have some oomph, and you got to have something. And do you have a secret sign? It's like, and you know that you have met a fellow tap a keg a day, right? I'm making fun of it, but we human beings have a need for this sort of stuff. We've all belonged to secret clubs or cliques or something like that, you know. Like, we professors stand around in the hallway going like, you know, looking severe and learned and all that, and going, when can I get out of here? I mean, we're only human, okay? The ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, the ancient anybody's went for this too, okay? We can't know with exactness what the Eleusinian or the Bacchic mysteries were like, for the same reason that Kristen, I'm quite sure, will never, ever, ever tell anybody in this room what the initiation is for her sorority, or what, you know, the initiation is for somebody's fraternity or lodge of water buffalo or stuff like that. It just doesn't happen. Which leaves us with literary sources and written sources, which is another hoot. To the ancients, Christianity was a mystery religion. Okay, what goes on at a Christian worship ceremony? We can't tell you because you're not a Christian yet. So what do? You make up all sorts of lies, right? Like, I know what goes on at a fraternity initiation. Everybody runs around in the backyard naked, yelling woohoo, woohoo, you know, with a beer bong hooked up to their mouth, you know. You exaggerate it. You make so people will chuckle when you talk about it, and you can work out, vent your frustration and not being asked to belong to it. It is the same thing, not so much with the Eleusinian mysteries, which are really above board and respectable. Okay, it's like being allowed to join Phi Beta Kappa or Eta Phi Sigma or something like that, you know. Oh, he's a Phi Beta Kappa, whoop-de-doo. The Bacchic mysteries is like being invited to join Animal House. Okay? But now that I've told you, now that I've shared that laughable joke with you, let me assure you, actually we're going to be showing this year the Bacchae in our modern and classical languages film series. Every year I get people who put down on their essays the religion of Dionysus. The Bacchic mysteries was basically a go-with-the-flow, partying kind of religion where everybody got really drunk and got really funky and went woo-hoo. You're smiling now, Mitch, but I can promise you, if you write that down on an essay exam, I'm going to fry you. Because there is a very real spiritual dimension to the Bacchic mysteries. A spiritual communion of deity and human that, of course, we'll never know about because it was a mystery religion, but at the same time got disrespected almost constantly because he looks like Boy George, you know. Who would have a religion of worshiping Boy George and the people he hangs around with? Or stuff. Okay. The Eleusinian mysteries. We don't have much time, but we'll do what we can with the Eleusinian mysteries right now. The cornerstone, if you will, of the Eleusinian mysteries is the abduction of Persephone. As best we can tell, the rituals were based on the myth. Our best source for the myth, by the way, is the Homeric hymn to Demeter. It's called a Homeric hymn because the ancient Greeks believed that Homer wrote it. We don't believe that today. Somebody who was copying Homer wrote it, just as all of these hair bands are imitations of Van Halen. The Homeric hymn to Demeter is the story of the rape or the stealing away of Persephone and her return. I'm going to require that you read it this weekend. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, so that you will have intelligent comments and questions to ask me about it, or to ask each other, or to make up answers for. The story is pretty much the story I told you last time at the beginning of our class, in which Hades is moping around the underworld, disappointed because he doesn't seem to be able to find a suitable bride. Zeus tells him that he has permission to take Persephone. Of course, Demeter, who is Persephone's mom, doesn't have any say in the matter, but remember, these are anthropomorphic gods and goddesses produced by a patriarchal society. Of course, the mother doesn't have anything to say about who her daughter marries. All she did was carry her to term and give birth to her and feed her and clothe her for however many years. And as Persephone walks through a field and stoops down to pick a flower known as the narcissus, the earth opens up, and on a chariot drawn by black horses comes Hades, god of the underworld. He swoops on Persephone, drags her into the chariot, and brings her down to his abode. Persephone doesn't want to go. She is screaming bloody murder. Yes?
I don't presume Hades very often came out from the underworld on the surface like that.
That's correct. His job is the underworld is a 24/7 job. Supposedly Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades once drew lots to see who got what. And Hades got stuck with the underworld. He wasn't very happy. And actually, two deities hear the screams of Persephone. Number one is Helios, the influential sun god. Number two is Hecate, who is an underworld goddess, usually associated with witchcraft. Demeter when she finds out that her daughter is missing, picks up two torches, and wanders around like a bird looking for her daughter. She wanders around for 9 days. Here's a question. Why 9 days? Okay. On day 10, Hecate reports, the goddess Hecate reports to Demeter, your daughter Persephone has been carried away by Hades. She was screaming bloody murder. She didn't want to go. On day 10, Helios also reports and tried to tell me that this does not bear some relation to life. Helios's take on the situation is, yes, Persephone has been stolen, but Demeter, you know that Hades is, after all, the king of the underworld and a very influential god, and it was Zeus's right to marry his daughter off. You know, she's not very happy, but she'll come around, Demeter, just you wait and see. At this point I ask, do we have anybody in the room who is anybody's mom? I'm not. Or a parent or anything like that? Or how many of you have a mother? Okay. Your mom has just been told where you've been kidnapped to. Okay? What is the next thing that your mom does? Goes there. Okay, that's very momish behavior, right? Very daddish behavior, unless you're Io's dad. In which case, oh great, you've been turned into a cow. Wonderful. Demeter wanders around, she's got her torches, wanders around and winds up in the city of Eleusis, which is a suburb of Athens. Now I agree, your moms and my mom, your dads, my dad, they would all be running down to the underworld, shaking Hades by his scruffy neck. He's never painted as being very good looking. And saying, give me my kid back, you rapist. But Demeter wanders around to the city of Eleusis, where she disguises herself as an old bag lady and says that her name is Doso. She sits by a fountain. It's really kind of pathetic. I'm just this real old lady sitting by a fountain, and she waits to see who's going to pick her up, who's going to accost her, so to speak, you little pervert. You know, who's going to talk to her, who's going to meet her, what kind of response she's going to meet. Gods and goddesses like to do this in Greek and Roman mythology. You know, and if you've ever stopped to think what would happen if God were one of us, keep in mind, you know, if he was a stranger on the bus. This motif is very common in Greek mythology too. But unfortunately, it is 10 minutes to the hour. We must leave the goddess Demeter sitting there by the fountain, waiting to see who she meets, while her daughter is down in the underworld with that scumbag Hades. Thank you very much. You've been a good class.